back and it's like, because like I was cleaning out my truck today and I was driving around in it and the CD that was in there was our Dying Effects CD.
Oh, good choice.
So it's been so long since I've listened to that. So I was like, fuck. I was like, well, let's just listen to this and turn it up. And I went to the song Enchanting Shadows.
Oh, it's such a good song.
Yeah, I know.
I love that song.
Like, I'm like, I was 18 when I wrote this. I'm like, that's pretty fucking good. Like, not like looking back, it's like I would think, okay, when I was 18, I knew shit about guitar, but like, and then I listened to the shit I was writing. I was like, it's not bad.
Hey, those guitar riffs are courtesy of the band This Old Ghost Town, and they're my guests today on Eric's Hotbox. Billy, Dan, and Daryl came by, and we talked about their new album, The Night the Mountain Fell. Billy plays guitar, Dan plays bass, and Daryl plays drums. These guys played the show at my birthday party, and they were nice enough to come by and talk about recording music and some other shit that they're into. We had a really good time. This is my longest episode ever. This is like 2 hours, but it's a fucking good interview. Definitely subscribe to their social media feeds. They're at This Old Ghost Town, ThisOldGhostTown on Instagram and Facebook, and you can buy their album on iTunes, and definitely go to their website, thisoldghosttown.com. You can download a couple of songs from their Bandcamp page as well. But I hope you'll really enjoy the episode. I'm going to play a little bit more music at the end of the episode. So if you want to stick around and like listen to a couple of tracks off of the album, I'm going to put like at least one, maybe 1.5, maybe 2 tracks from the album. Anyway, it's good. I hope you guys like it. Eric's Hotbox. Yeah.
The same story told. I feel the world is come to an end. Come to an end.
Okay. Well, I'll put that in when I record an intro later. Before this. No, it's the beauty of editing is that I can just...
3, 2,
1.
and we're live.
Okay.
So what is the thing with that? How come when you listen to Joe Rogan podcast on YouTube, he does that? And 3, 2, 1,
He only does that on the YouTube one.
and then
Yeah.
pauses for a while. And then
Oh, that's where he cuts it.
Yeah, because he does the ads after. He used to do the ads before, and then just have the other person sit there and like listen to him read the ads. But then he just figured that was fucking stupid because it just killed all the energy if they're like talking and bullshitting beforehand.
Yeah.
So now he just like after the podcast is done, he records the intro and the ads and the outro and the ads, and fucking away they go.
And if you watch the live, sometimes you'll catch a bit of stuff before the podcast starts too.
Okay, first things first.
Okay, and then...
Wait.
Okay, wait.
Introduce
Now we're
yourselves. This Eric's
wait.
Hotbox. The guests are This Old Ghost Town, and so just tell people who they're listening to, so at least they're not just confused by all the voices.
I'm Billy.
I'm Daryl.
And I'm Dan.
Okay, that's all we need to get to. That was painful and formal, but what the fuck?
It's like high school.
A little bit. How's it going, guys?
There he is.
Now it's like we're talking into a microphone. Okay. Let's talk about music. What's the best album you've heard this year?
Ooh.
Not this year, but like 2017. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. That's fair.
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, William.
Mine would have to be the Pliny album.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the name of the album again? Handmade Cities.
Yeah.
By Pliny. Instrumental guitar album.
It.
By far.
I liked some instrumental music beforehand, but that fucking changed my mind.
Easy.
Blew my mind in terms of what is out there.
That was definitely my most listened to album.
Mine's I'd say Jason Richardson, which is right up there with him, and Luke Holland on the drums. Yeah, that album is mind blowing.
Yeah, well, I'd just go with Fellini as well.
So we're a folk band that all has favorite metal albums.
But I mean, like, the big thing about that was I remember one day we were at practice and I was like, guys, you have to listen to this. This is awesome. I played like 3 or 4 Fellini tracks all in a row, and you know they were kind of listening, we were kind of chatting, whatever, and then I don't know, this new album comes out and I posted in the group and I was like, guys, you got to listen to this. Like, Fellini just put out a full album, and it was just like, whatever. No real responses or anything. And then one day Billy's just listening on YouTube.
Like 2 months later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I was really high.
He was just chilling on
And I was
YouTube,
listening to the Intervals album on YouTube,
which is also a really good album.
and then it came on as just up next.
Exactly.
Holy shit! What is this?
He just stumbles into it. And he's like, this is amazing. He's like, hey guys, have you heard this? I'm like, yeah, I played like 4 of his tracks like months ago and told you about it and everything.
You know, sometimes it just takes that though. Like,
You-
if you're not in the mood to hear something,
Yeah,
you're not.
sometimes it has to be introduced to you properly.
And
By YouTube. By an algorithm.
well, music with that too, like if you don't pay attention, sometimes it just sounds like an instrumental and you're like,
Yeah.
you know, who's this random instrumentalist? You're not really engaged in it.
It is great for background music though.
Yeah.
Tried to get Eric into some of that stuff at work.
I know I'm a hard sell on instrumentals. I really am, because like I like it for background music if I'm like doing other shit, but for guitar-based music to listen to, like I'm still just a sucker for like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Give me a solo in there.
Kind of a pussy then.
I know what I like.
That's fair.
You know?
Absolutely.
Just that I love that standard structure. I like rigidity when it comes to like forcing you to approach the instrument in a way that might not have been considered before. Like if you have all the options in the world, sometimes I get like paralyzed by having too many choices. So I want to pare it down and like make it simpler and not have as many options, and like then just see what I can do under pressure instead. Like I prefer to work under pressure than like to have all the opportunities. I don't know. I like the blues and I like simple shit. I guess that's what it comes down to.
Well, I mean, the guys who are still being successful today, pumping out, you know, music that's, you know, of a sort, you know, of that kind of standard.
Mm-hmm.
You expect, you know, verse, chorus, and then, you know, a little combination of bridge and chorus and whatever, just to make the song a little bit different. But
Yeah.
you know, keeps going on and on and on, but people keep taking a, you know, simple format and it keep finding ways to make it work,
It is a really cool
which
thing
is really cool.
about the, like, I don't know, it kind of tires me out about the blues too, though, is that it does, like, after a while you can only hear Grits Ain't Groceries like so many fucking times, and then it's just the same song over and over again. So I get what you're saying, and I suppose I need to give instrumental music more of an opportunity to like tell the story that it wants to. So I'm used to songs being more like lyrically based initially, so letting go and like not just like, it's one thing to just have electronic music that is not, I don't know, as melodic or musicianshiply skilled as like a guitar based thing would be. So I don't know, what am I saying? I want to give it a chance. I guess I should give it a chance. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the thing with these players is that they basically tell like the story and have the emotions and everything as a singer, but they portray it through the guitar.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them so good, because you can listen to it and you get all the same things that you get from like the melody of the singing, but the lyrics just aren't there.
And I find even sometimes in that, some of these guys will have guest vocalists come on for 1 or 2 songs on their albums that they put out. I find that sometimes the guest vocalists ruin the song because the vocalist isn't my style of vocalist. So I listen to the song, and that becomes the song I skip because it takes away from what I'm getting from listening to the guitar part, from listening to the drum part, and that's the way it was written originally. It's just a guitar-based song,
Yeah.
a guitar-led song. And then his buddy said, "Hey, let me throw some vocals on it." He said, "Oh, fuck yeah!" And they did it, but I don't know. Sometimes it can take away from the actual song itself if you're into that style of music.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what Billy said about them trying to tell a story just through, you know, the guitar. I think the album's called Super Colossal. It's by Joe Satriani. It's an instrumental, but one thing that I really stuck out about that album is there's like the lead, like the title track, Super Colossal, for example. It's just he just what he did is he just wrote down a bunch of big words like super, colossal, gigantic. He just threw out all these words, got his brain thinking about that, then grabbed his guitar and played with his effects, and he basically created a song that just sounds, you can close your eyes and kind of paint your own little movie, and you can kind of just think of really large. I thought of kind of like massive giants moving through like skyscrapers or something. It's just kind of paint your own sort of picture. And what he did was that entire album, you can look at the title of the track, kind of get a feel for what he's going for, and then as you're listening to the song, just kind of putting yourself there, because we all know kind of like the violin noise and horror and stuff like that. Like music really can put us in a very specific spot. So I don't know, that's a good way to try and go into it, is reading like the title and trying to think, okay, how does the music relate to that?
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever feel like there's artists that you discover and that you want to get into, but that they have a catalog that's like almost too big to penetrate? And I'll give you an example. Frank Zappa. Like, sounds really cool and awesome, but like, where the fuck do you start listening to Frank Zappa? There's so much.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's like where you start at the beginning and then work your way up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really hard to get into some really early stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're not part of that time era when that was going on, sometimes it's hard to get into that stuff.
That
like-
being said, though,
Yeah.
there's music. I won't name the band, Metallica, but I didn't listen to Metallica at all when I was a kid, ever. And then
I tried.
you tried to let me hear Metallica because you fucking loved Metallica back in the day, and so I didn't really get into it until I actually got into the heavier music, which now I love, and I love thrash. I like the old Metallica albums, but I don't like the new stuff. So if that was a band that someone, like you're saying, like Frank Zappa, if you were to go in and just pick an album and you pick Saint Anger, you're kind of listening to the worst fucking
You dropped the
version
band
of it.
so hard.
right?
Yeah.
Like, but if you go in there and you're listening to Master Puppets, you'd be like, okay, these guys are tight. So I have no idea. It is tough to pick an album from guys like that.
Yeah, bands evolve. I mean, early Zeppelin's all covers. Mid Zeppelin is like their
Covers.
it's more unique take on these covers, but it is true. A lot of their catalog is covers.
I mean, a lot of the blues was back in the day. Like, everybody played everybody else's
When
music.
they made that song, was that Black Betty?
It's my favorite Zeppelin song.
And then later stage, it's all weird, sort of like they're getting really experimental with their stuff. And I mean, if someone's
The 80s
just
were
like,
coming.
you think to yourself, okay, I want to listen to a band. You're not necessarily gonna like grabbing their newest album. It could be something in the middle of their catalog or the beginning, and you could have a completely different band.
I've started to hear that about the Black Keys. A lot of people
100%.
feeling that, like, they went from this really awesome raw sound to like this really, really super produced thing that's going on. You know, I find the same thing with Jack White doing his shit now. I was a big fan of the White Stripes because it was just him and Meg trying to do as much as they could do, the two of them.
Yeah.
But as he left the White Stripes and went on to more and more things, it just like added more and more production to the music.
He did, but some of it was really good.
I know it's
Like,
that's the thing that keeps you coming back.
I love
for sure.
the Dead Weather,
Oh yeah, they
That-
were good. Rack on
Yeah.
Price were good too.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
but
His solo albums are great too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big Jack White fan. My favorite stuff of his is like early White Stripes.
well, the Black Keys.
No,
The White Stripes.
I wish I had.
Vancouver.
Ooh.
It was honestly, I wasn't into them at the time. Like, I was way too, I was metal as fuck, so I couldn't get into Jack White. But I went to the show in Vancouver.
weird white guy.
Yeah, right? I went to the show in Vancouver, and it was honestly mind blowing. That's the day I became a fan. Was the day I watched them live, and Jack White.
Did he play one note and walk off stage?
No, I had for a dollar bill. No, that was Northwest Territories. or something like that. But
Yeah.
no, they were just the two of them created such a big epic sound live. It was really cool to see.
Was there any backing tracks that they played?
No, he didn't backtrack anything. He didn't even loop.
The Black Keys, they started off as just they have an album called Rubber Factory. Literally, they recorded in their local rubber factory where they both worked. The drummer, he played a like a child set, so it was like a mini set, and he had very basic setup, almost like nothing compared to like a regular, almost kind of like our setup in a way, just like very small amount of pieces on the kit, and they just sat there and pressed record and played. And when me and my friends in high school heard that they're going to be produced by Danger Mouse, we thought, okay, well this could really suck, because we're gonna lose this kind of raw feeling. And it comes out, and it was like, okay, this is good, but there was definitely a huge difference between their raw sound, was kind of felt like a classic bluesy rock, and then transformed into just commercial.
Yeah.
Even though it's still unique.
Should have called our album The Bedroom. Bill's Bedroom.
Billy's Love Dead.
It should be our EP name.
Well, our EP's gonna be Go to This Old Ghost Town Drops a Deuce. 2-song EP.
So do you want to talk about that? Like, what was it like recording an album?
So we did it all ourselves. Recording, mixing, editing.
Billy did 95% of it.
Yeah, he bitched about it a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when we were like, hey, you have a new version yet? Have you edited it yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? What the fuck?
Yeah. A lot of time spent, a lot of evenings spent just like editing, or I did a lot of my stuff by myself at home too, like a lot of recording by myself. I redid a lot of my vocal tracks at home by myself, and then guitar tracks, and I wrote all my solos just after all the songs were kind of written. I had some of the solos loosely written, but I'd play them like, I'd sit there and have the part and just loop it over and over and over, and just play it again and again and again and again until I find just like little chunks that worked.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lot of work. It took way longer than we thought
Yeah.
to actually record a full album.
Like, a big wrench in the gears was just timing. Summer was super busy for both me and Dan to work.
Yeah.
You go fishing on the weekend, so it's like, when do we have time to sit down and record?
Yeah,
so
kid.
we never picked. Why that was like later.
Didn't you have it? Oh no. You had the kid
Did I have
when
a
we were
kid?
recording.
Yeah.
Marshall's too.
Oh, yeah.
You've had a kid for a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while. But no, back to the recording.
Hopefully he never listens to this.
Well, the last couple of years. No. It's been so good that it's been a blur. Right? There you go.
Perfect. Good save.
Good save. I just dug myself out of that one. No, the recording, it took a while just because it was a lot of juggling 3 independent lives where the band it's not our first priority.
Mm-hmm.
We love doing it. We love playing. But it was never a, hey, we need to do this. We need to, quit our jobs and record this album. We just kind of knew that, hey, we wrote these songs. We have fun playing them. Let's record them. Let's get them down. Let's hear it. And it was our first time recording a whole record. Yours too.
Well,
Like all of
ourselves.
us.
We've recorded an album ourselves way back.
Oh yeah.
I've recorded multiple albums in
Full
Nelson.
albums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they're really low quality with very little editing.
Yeah.
So it was more just a band putting their stuff like in the mixtape sort of thing.
Yeah. We
Nothing like this. It was
I forgot about the whole. The problem is there's such a big gap in time. We recorded an album when we were 18, put it out when we were 19, and then 11 years later, or 10 years later, we sit down to write another album. And in between that time, it's only been 1 or 2 songs that we've been going back and forth with for years, maybe 5 at one time. But that was it. So doing a full album now seemed like a totally different experience.
And totally different style too.
Yeah.
Which made it easier. Hardest thing about like rock and metal music to record is the drums.
And
Because
only
you have like a
two
big
pieces.
drum set.
Yeah.
But that's what made this easy. One part that was easy, just a 2-piece drum set was like made things so much easier.
for you as an engineer.
Well, you don't have to control, the bleeding of each piece of the kit into the other mic and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's nice to juggle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So do you guys wouldn't record any of the parts together all at once? It would just be individual tracking where you would like listen to a guitar part or listen to a drum beat and try and play along to it?
Yeah, you start with a click track. So you just start, I start with a metronome, and then I just play the main rhythm track, and then that's what Daryl listens to, and then he lays the drum tracks over that.
Which is something we learned the first time. That's how Kevin did it in Saskatchewan.
That's kind of the proper way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
And
just
then-
how we did
So
it.
you lay the click track, and then you lay the drums
Good.
over the click track. So it's a guitar track that's played to a metronome.
Mm-hmm.
And then bass comes over top of that, and then when you have bass and drums, basically you can delete that kind of rough guitar track, and then you put the like good guitar tracks on it, and then after all that, then you go to bass or like vocals, and then lead guitar, harmonies.
Whatever else you got.
And doing it that way too, like if you're all playing together and someone doesn't like their part, like it's a lot more difficult to keep going back. Like a lot of the bass parts continue to change, but
Yeah, forever.
yeah, they'll always keep
I've heard about these jam
Evolving.
sessions.
but
When Dan shows up and his eyes are hardly open.
oh yeah, but yeah, it keeps changing. So like when we're actually sit down to record the songs, each and every time, like we would start off by I'd play the whole thing, and we'd go back and say, okay, well, we like this bit, we want to change this bit, and then kind of like work together to make a change to it. And I mean, there's been changes to riffs that Billy's done and things like that, just because you have the luxury of going back and playing it over and over, and all of a sudden when you're really digging into the track, you can figure out, okay, I want to actually do something a little bit different here, change this up entirely. And
Yeah, that's the time to do it because you can record it and then play it back
yeah,
and then hear yourself.
you can play one and then the other and then say, okay, which one did I like better?
Versus if you do the whole thing at once. And that's just I don't know. I don't know, and I don't want to talk about live shows right now, but when we play live, people always tell us we're good, but we'll never be able to hear what we sound like live. But when we record it from playing live, like if we were at a jam session, we had mics that we recorded it, I still don't think it would have been album quality for what we were looking for in an album.
Yeah.
Even if we did one take of that and then tracked some stuff on top, it still wouldn't have been what we wanted, because the album, literally from day one of recording to the end of it, there so many changes happened in each part, except for basically the main drum part. Those are usually the same. but like in the bass parts, in the not the rhythm guitar, but in the lead guitars, and then in vocals, like we changed harmonies, we changed melodies, we dropped parts, we dropped whole songs because the vocals didn't work.
Really?
Yeah, we had 2 songs that we dropped because we couldn't get the vocals.
Does that change the way that you approach those songs live? Had you played those songs that you had dropped live before?
Yeah.
And then does it change how you play them live in the future?
One song we had
We just
pretty high hopes going into the studio. We thought it was going to be a wicked song, but
Yeah.
once we got everything laid out, like it was a really fun song to play live.
and it's slower, so it's not always the best at a bar.
I was talking about the other one.
Oh, the other one. Well, that
Yeah.
sounds fun. That's
Yeah,
fast.
that's the song I was thinking of too.
Okay. We were going in, with high hopes, and then the vocals just
Yeah.
the day that we
Our
were doing
melodies
vocals.
just didn't sound good.
And that was like the one song we had to like drastically change the tuning of the guitar for too. And so when we used to play it live, and we had this little gap, and Daryl would chat for a little bit, and I don't know, after and like we played it right up until we started to try and record it, and then it was just like, well, now we're kind of bummed out about the how the vocals work, and they're just it's a song that takes a bit of time to get into on stage. We kind of decided to kind of completely let it go, where the other one we still played a bit because we enjoyed the song. It just didn't come out right.
We needed to fill in the time. And
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people don't read contracts apparently.
whatever.
So when it comes down to like picking order for the songs, once you've decided on the songs for the album, was that difficult? Because that's another thing that I just feel like I would be like paralyzed by choice with.
We were at my house and we just said, hey, look, we need to decide the order tonight, and we need to decide the album name tonight. Just because we had to email some guy to make the cover art, and he needed that because it's on the back cover.
Yeah.
So we needed the album name and we needed the songs. So we just sat down, and even though we got off track, 50 times, we eventually came to it. We kind of knew that we wanted Ripple in the Stream at the end. It's kind of our favorite song at the end last.
It is a great song.
Right?
It does
and
feel...
it's good last. It's
does
a good
wrap up.
Yeah.
It's a good ender. We knew we wanted Alexandra or Dead Man's Flats first, but on the record, Alexandra just worked better because Dead Man's kind of just comes in, whereas Alexandra has more of a...
That intro on Alexandra is awesome.
Thank you.
I think it's really great.
I like it.
I get to fanboy a little bit. Come on.
No, absolutely.
I'm a fan of the album.
That's awesome. And then for other songs, like we kind of...
I was like song 2 and song 7 usually have to be strong songs for whatever reason. On albums, song 2 is usually one of the singles,
That's true.
and then song
Yeah.
7 is usually a good song.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of did it that way, right? Because song 2
No, there's always like a
It's
lull
and-
around
or-
song 5.
And for me.
and for me, and that's like single quality.
And
That's a good song.
What you just said, there's usually a lull around song 5. That's what we deliberately set out to not do. We kind of do, if you think about it, but it's 4 bangers basically in a row,
Yeah.
ending with...
It starts very strong.
Yeah, and then track 4 is Bruce and the Goose, which is kind of our fastest, most chaotic... chaos not the right word, but just a fun song.
Jammy.
Energetic.
Jammy, yeah, energetic. And then after that, song 5, it drops. But that was kind of because the beginning was so strong. It was kind of like it seemed like a natural flow
Yeah.
to go from something like that and then just go to something that's just picking guitars and vocals and that's it, and then build back up in song 6 with our first single, and then moving into another fast song on song 7, and then finishing out the album. So it just kind of worked, the track listing, and then the album name. That was another
That was easy, wasn't it?
no.
What else did we have?
We had a bunch of stuff. We didn't get that was like the last one we decided on. That was it.
No, we were... What were we doing? We were talking about the pass, and we were discussing, like... A couple times when we were naming our songs, we decided, there's some vocal line or there's something that it obviously should be, but then we decided to do something, pick a different couple words from the song, or title it something differently, just because we didn't want to be super predictable. So I remember,
Chorus.
yeah,
The hook of
The
every
first
chorus.
line of every chorus.
exactly.
Songs.
So we have. We were talking about the pass, and I can't remember if it was myself or maybe it was Daryl, or I can't remember, but somebody was just popped out and said, well, I thought that it just because of the lyrics, it could have been the title of the pass could have been The Night the Mountain Fell or something like that, and then it was kind of like, wait, what if we did name the album? So I remember that was coming out of the idea of just talking about how we named some of the songs, and it kind of just popped out.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of always knew that was the name, didn't we? And then
I thought we had that picked up a while.
but then we sat down and tried to decide to say, hey, is this for sure?
Yeah,
And that's when we second guessed it. And
we
And-
kind of took
I
a...
think our second option was Alexandra.
yeah, we named our original EP that, so we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So the Night the Mountain Fell just kind of worked. I think it's a great album name.
I do
Yeah.
too, frankly. I really like it.
comes out of nowhere.
It's a really cool, like you said, visual. You just like picture what the fuck's going on that this mountain fell over. Like, this is big news. You
And
know?
that's what I like about, and I hate to be that guy, but that's what I like about a lot of our music. For me, is that the
Oh my
lyrics
god, you
are-
like your own music, you fucking dick.
I know, right? But
We
you
don't
seem,
have any love songs.
you seem kind of cocky when you say you like your own stuff. I don't mean to be,
I know.
but I
only
actually-
listen to my own music.
I listen to my own music. Like
I have
in
a
the car.
podcast because I think I'm good enough at talking. Like, it's so dumb.
Good point.
But-
That's what I feel like our album has. It has a lot of that visual lyrics that you can actually understand. Yeah, descriptive, but you can actually understand, and you try to picture the story of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like The Night the Mountain Fell, or The Past, the song, sorry. It just, to me, I've always, ever since the first time I drove through Frank's Slide, after he told me, because he lived there in Crow's Nest Pass when he was a kid. But Billy told me the story when I was a little kid, and then I drove through there, and it was like, wow. And we stopped at Turtle Mountain thing, and looked at the museum there or whatever, and looked at the slide, and it's like a whole town crushed in one night with a mountain just cracking, and they could hear the crack in Cochrane, like it sounded like a loud boom in Cochrane.
Yeah.
And like
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was old enough, like long enough ago that their bank still had like golden stuff in it. So I mean, if you dug in there, you'd apparently, could get some pretty cool treasure and stuff. But they've
for the past part too.
Maybe that's like related somehow to Alexandra and like, the gold that they found. I don't know. But it's cool when you can start to reference and like build ideas around more like, like established ideas that are already existing in people's heads, but like become almost like myths and legends. And we're like, you think of The Night the Mountain Fell. Well, that couldn't possibly be real, but sure shit, there's a story of it somewhere, of it actually happening and crushing this town in one night, and like they could hear the crack in Cochrane. So like it kind of blends the two worlds between like this is reality and this is a thing that happened, and this is how you like tie it to lore and myth and like turn it into something that could potentially last forever because you've created a way to communicate an idea about something super epic that happened.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
yeah, I get that.
Loosely based on real events.
Yeah, like it's like mythology is one thing, but like this becomes like a real thing representing the actual life. So
That's
Bill cracking a beer there. Cold
Dude,
one.
how's it going?
that's even like the lore part of it is like when Billy wrote the words to Alexandra, back before Dan was in the
Yeah, like
he
I
was just
love
like-
imagining that fucking train and the road
train,
and
yeah.
shit.
Do you know where
It's-
that's from?
You told me the story,
So-
but
so-
please,
so-
let's
Yeah, go ahead. This is
Well,
what happened.
friend-
He told me this story.
I just heard this from a friend of mine, and he said his dad, because I was telling him about my story on Dead Man's Flat, so my dad told me the story and stuff. And so the story of Alexandra, his dad told him the lake around Three Valley Gap, and there's the railroad tracks that skirt around the lake, that's an old gold mining town, and that they had a huge load of gold, which they actually dropped one of the train cars in the lake, and apparently lots of divers went down trying to find this gold that they dropped at the bottom of the lake, and they couldn't find it.
And that's what Billy, when you wrote the song, you
It's loosely based on that, but it's also based on, yeah, it's just kind of other things I added in there to make it kind of give it maybe a love interest. Would
with
that
the
be?
Alexandra
With
thing.
Alexandra?
A little
The
bit.
Lady, Alexandra, Lady of the Lake, is actually taken from the name of a fly pattern.
Lit Alexandra.
Alexandra is a fly pattern, and
Oh, nice.
it's also its second name is called Lady of the Lake. So that's where the first words come from.
I think it's cool because it sounds a really, I don't know, it names the treasure that's fallen into the lake so perfectly. Like the treasure becomes the lady, right? That's the idea.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know. That's what I imagine it to be.
It could be.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sorry, we had to get a fresh round.
That's the same thing with Dead Man's, and I give Billy a lot of credit for both those songs. That Dead Man's Flats is a story that Billy's dad actually used to tell them every time they drove through Dead Man's Flats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the actual story,
Well, that's
but we drive through the mountains back and forth from BC and Alberta every summer for holidays.
but
And every time we go through Dead Man's Flats, me and my sisters would get my dad to tell us a story. And my dad would tell us a ghost story based on how, and he would just make it up on the spot, I'm sure, but he would just tell a story, like a ghost story, on how Dead Man's Flats got its name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where that thing is, like, that the lyrics of that song are based on.
Do you think ghosts are real?
I've had experiences, but I don't. I'm very logical in a lot of ways, and every logic part of me says no. But I've had weird experiences back in my old house.
Like what?
We're getting into
Let's dig into this one.
Getting into that now.
Yeah, we had some really weird experiences in the house in Crow's Nest Pass. Actually, that was on the other side of Turtle Mountain, the mountain that fell. So, I guess the first one was me and my friend were having a sleepover one night. This is when I was in like grade 4 or something, and we saw a man in the basement, and we freaked out, and then ran upstairs, whatever. So that was one thing, and then I was getting up in the middle of the night one night to go to the bathroom, and I saw an old lady in the hallway, and I remember running to my room and screaming so hard that that my body kept trying to scream, but I had no air left in my lungs, and I couldn't breathe for like a long time because my body was still so scared. It was trying to force out a scream, and then my dad rushed in the room and turned the lights on, and like, yeah. And then there's a few other incidences kind of similar to that happened. But then this was like, so I was in grade 4 or so when that stuff kind of happened. And then when I was about 17, we used to sit around the table for dinner all the time with my family. And my sister always used to make fun of me for seeing an old lady in the hall and stuff. And then my dad kind of gets serious, and he's like, well, actually, the guy that lived in the house before us, he told my dad that his son, his 19-year-old son, passed away while living in the house. I think he died in a car accident or something. And they got the house, sorry. And they got the house because from an auction or whatever, because the old lady passed away in the house that owned it previous. So when, my dad hears his, like, I don't know how old you are in grade 4.
10.
10.
Add 6-ish,
like
right?
An old lady and some man in the house, and then he was just told that, that there was an old lady and a kid that died while living in the house. He's kind of like, And then, like, my sisters had some experiences, and my mom had experiences, and my dad had a few things weird happen to him.
Okay, the reason that I ask, it was like a left turn of a question, but the lyric in the song where it talks about like the ghost of the native chief and all that sort of stuff, like it was written believably, like it was written enough by like I don't know, I could picture exactly the imagery in my head of the idea that you were trying to convey across, and so like it seemed like there had to be some conviction there, and so like I figured you probably had a decent ghost story.
Yeah.
When you hear that story that he just shared, when you hear that around a campfire, oh fuck.
Yeah.
You're scared.
Looking over your shoulder and
You're
shit.
thinking.
That's cool. I've never been able to tell a good ghost story. I always wish, like, I've always wondered how it is a skill that people have. Like, I just don't know how to make things freaky.
I've been obsessed with it for quite a while. Like a lot of coworkers I work with, I try to, if I get close enough, I'll ask them about if they've had any weird experiences or any new friends I make and stuff, because I like hearing them.
Have you heard any, like,
I've heard some cool ones.
do you remember any of them decently?
Yeah. The one that I heard from this guy I used to work with, he was at his friend's house. I think he was a little older than me. He was in his mid-20s, and I was probably maybe 20 at the time. They went over to their friend's house because his parents were out of town, and it was just him and like 2 or 3 buddies drinking in the house, and they were upstairs drinking, and then they kind of got into like a similar conversation like us, like ghost stories and stuff. So it was the 2 brothers that lived in the house, and he's like, do you guys want to see something fucked up? He's like, come downstairs with us. So they go downstairs, and then apparently there was a doll sitting on kind of like a pony wall kind of a thing. And there's like in the corner, she was kind of perched in the corner with her heads and her hair kind of a certain way. And so one of the guys takes it off the pony wall and puts it on the ground. He's like, so just remember, like I put her here exactly like this. He's like, we'll go have another beer, and then like half hour, 45 minutes, we'll come down, I guarantee she'll be back up on the shelf. So there's nobody else in the house. The guy's parents are gone. It's just him and a couple of his buddies. They all go upstairs. Nobody leaves the room. And they finish their beer. They go back downstairs, and this doll is back up on the shelf where it was. Exactly how the hair was before, and exactly how the head was facing before. And he said he just couldn't explain it. He said there was nobody in the house. Could have been nobody else that went downstairs. Like it was.
Goddamn.
Yeah, and I've heard. I think you've told me that one before.
Yeah.
And I heard some on. They had a ghost story thing on the radio a little while ago, and people from the Okanagan were calling in, saying ghost stories they had, and some of them were like, not scary, but legitimate. Like this actually happened to this person. This person's not inventing this or making this up. And I've never really had one, and I have a tough time. The logic in me says that it isn't real, but then at the same point, we don't know we don't know we don't know shit all.
What is
about
real?
This universe, yeah, exactly. So we have no idea what possibilities are out there. So I completely buy into.
Do you think?
Seeing things?
Do you think we live in a simulation?
No.
We might.
I mean,
We could. I believe that there's endless possibilities of our purpose on Earth.
depends on how you define simulation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, pretty much everything we sense is not the thing we sense. It's a projection of it, right? So, like, I'm not seeing Billy. I'm seeing what's happening is the light.
Seeing the giant zit on Billy's forehead.
Light is bouncing off of Billy's zit. The light
You're
is
seeing the reflection
it's hitting
of
it.
the light
It's
on
going. It's not a reflection. Like the part of it is
Yeah.
the light goes into the eye and gets picked up. Right,
Yeah.
goes up to the brain, and the brain says, "Okay, I understand what this data means," and then it projects back out.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're seeing. So you're not actually, like, I'm not seeing the physical Billy. I'm seeing my brain's own 3D movie of the information it's bringing in.
Yeah.
So in a sense, and it's the same thing. I touch the can. I'm not technically feeling my finger. My brain is projecting out, okay, there's a sensation right here in this three-dimensional space. So everything that you're experiencing is actually kind of just like a hologram projection of what's actually going on. So it kind of is a little bit like a simulation.
For sure, and even just the idea that, like, as there any visual stimuli that you receive, when it hits your brain, no matter what, it's immediately changed to everything's upside down, and then your brain receives it, and then it goes back out through your lenses, and then you perceive it as like right side up or whatever. It's so fucking crazy. The first time I learned that like everything is going on backwards, upside down, and it's all just electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Yeah. Nuts. Changes literally changes belief systems.
Yeah.
In people. Like
Belief systems, like nation building, it changes everything. It's crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting because when you apply that idea of your brain is just projecting things out, when you do anything that kind of alters your state of mind, like LSD, for example, the molecule kind of mimics receptors in your brain. So some people will, the fun description is, the couch turns into an elephant sort of thing. And it's not quite like that, but what happens is you look at an object, but because you have these extra molecules that are hovering around in your brain and kind of attaching when these neurons are firing, it's slightly distorting the information that your brain is sending and receiving. So you would see something kind of take on new characteristics in a sort of way. So if you were to I wouldn't consider it like a ghost story sort of thing. I personally think it's more UFO-y. But
6 of 1, half dozen.
yeah.
What does the E stand for?
Eric.
Eric's pretty high.
So I used to live in a house about 15 minutes outside of Nelson on the way to Castlegar. So it was kind of in the mountain, no city lights, no nothing, right? So if you turned off all the lights in the house or you walked just a little bit, you can get, completely unfiltered sky shots and stuff like that. It was really cool living out basically on a mountain.
Era?
Yes, this is post-satellite era.
Okay.
This is PSE, so
UFO.
that's what the E is. And so we
Sorry.
Where did you that story, Bill?
we had a few power outages over the years, and they kind of all were a little bit weird because
You have a dam right down the road. The water never stops.
yeah. So how the fuck does that happen?
I'm not kidding.
There's literally like a few dams in this like river that I lived, right beside, and
I can promise you, as a power engineer, it's more complicated than that.
I know.
And as an electrician, not gonna back.
yeah. Oh man, and so this one night, power goes out, and we have like an actual chimney fireplace sort of thing. So I grabbed some wood out of the out of the garage and tossed it on the fire, and it was probably like 11 o'clock. For whatever reason, my family wasn't sleeping, and normally we go to bed before then. And I went upstairs. I can't even remember why, and there was some light underneath one of the spare room doors. We had 2 spare rooms on the top floor. This house was like a freaking mansion. It was crazy. It was huge. And I saw some light, so I was like, I yell out, I think the power's back on. So I run into my room, turn on the lights, but nothing, right? So I come back out, no light under the door, and I thought that was really weird. So I was kind of freaking out a bit.
Understandably.
Right? So I grab my flashlight, and I have I don't know, I grabbed a flashlight and something else, and I kind of opened up the door and looked in the spare room, and nothing, right? Another time, it was me and a couple of friends who were over at my house, and my parents were out for some reason. It was sleepover sort of thing, and the power goes out again. Sure. These happened 2 separate years, and we were kind of just okay, sure. Lit up like a couple candles, and we're hanging out in the living room. Can't remember what we were doing, probably talking or whatever, because
The TV was off.
everything was off. we're probably gonna play Smash Brothers or something. I don't know.
Playing board games
Probably gonna smash.
in the candle.
Smash it.
And all of a sudden, like, there was light coming in through pretty much every window. It was like bright all of a sudden. This is at night sort of thing. Like, we had to light candles. It was dark.
Yeah.
Everything was bright for a couple of seconds, and we're kind of scared to go to the window and stuff because it was really freaking weird. And we're looking out and stuff and couldn't see anything. Couldn't tell what was going on. Now, at the time, we thought some aliens popped by and lit the whole place up, and
Put probes in your asshole.
yeah. Time probably like we were lifted up and plopped back down the exact same position as we were, and we didn't know anything had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Days had passed, but
Time's all relative.
right. They went into a time vacuum and experimented on us while the rest of the world wasn't even moving. No, but it was really weird.
Like,
and
what if that's possible?
If you get time warp,
yeah. Age 2 years.
probe you for the short infinity, and just drop you back on Earth a second later.
And that'd be freaking
That'd be fun.
could be happening right now.
No, but
I don't know.
I get why you say the UFO. Yeah, I completely understand that.
But I mean, you think back, and
So
it's
who was here to experience that with you?
me and 3 buddies. So I mean,
How
It's
high
all
were
just-
you?
not high at all. It was completely unexplainable at the time. I mean, I can look back at it now that I have, the knowledge that I have, and I can speculate, like, maybe there was some sort of really bright phenomena in the sky. Like, I mean, we've seen like a meteor that whipped by
Excuse me.
Russia. Gosh, maybe 6-7 years ago. I can't remember how long, but it was this massive, like,
Fire or tail.
yeah, it was huge, and like people like recording it. It looked absolutely insane, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a massive rock exploding basically in our atmosphere. But it was like it produced a ton of light. It was very bright and everything. So it's possible something like that might have
We had a couple good ones. this
happened.
summer.
But I mean, at the time, we were convinced it was, you know, some alien sort of thing, and our mind kind of just it took whatever we knew and tried to project it out there, and because we didn't know, we just kind of created this whole story, and it was 100% real to us. There's no way anything could have created that kind of light.
But up to this point, you still don't know.
No, I don't know. I can
don't know.
I can actually make an educated sort of
If you
speculation.
think if it was some sort of meteor blast or something above the town, you'd definitely hear about it.
Like the next day at school or something, right?
And
Everyone would be
it would
talking about
be,
it.
it'd be in the local news. It would, you know.
Yeah, we didn't really read the news or
But
anything.
your parents would have told you. Because they would have been listening to probably CBC radio.
So, well, did you
And
see
they
the
would've
big
heard about
meteor
it.
last night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You never know. It might not have come up, but I'm just...
No, true.
I'm trying to
That's
give
totally
more-
true.
I'm
It's
trying
totally
to give
true.
more validity to the fact that you were sucked up into a vacuum.
Oh man, I
Resistance
spent
is futile.
spent a lot of time researching more so the idea of aliens than the idea of ghosts, but also
At the same point, though, I'm going to go there, but aliens and ghosts could potentially be the same thing.
Dimensional.
but
What?
Dimensional.
but I mean,
I heard
But I mean,
multi-dimension mall.
That's what I heard too. Multidimensional.
that's this. There's a speculation there that's what we might encounter first is not another like flesh and bone sort of creature, but like an extra dimensional being, like a being of light or something that exists on a different plane.
It very well could. I personally think aliens are humans. Or not humans, but an intelligent life form from Earth. They are Earthlings from either the future or the past, and it's just time and space is fucked up how things happen. I could go long-winded into it, but I'm not going to.
That's
Sometimes
just your theory.
Well, I've heard it from someone else. It's not I didn't create it. It's
I-
just what I subscribe to.
I know of a really crazy theory that involves Atlantis, time-traveling Jews, and just like crazy otherworld energies.
Yeah, we'll hear it another time.
is that Scientology?
No.
Could be, though. It's pretty cool.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not far off. Don't they think that Native Americans are Israelites?
No, that's Mormons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
Scientologists are they're both technically both of those religions are people from space.
Right. The Scientologists believe that they're like implanted in volcanoes and shit. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't they get like a planet named after them after they ascend or
So do
whatever?
Mormons too. Mormons get their own planet.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah.
suck Tom Cruise's dick enough times.
Yeah. Or just pay a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Doesn't even sound important now that we know more about the universe. Like, oh, you get a planet named after you. Like,
I know.
pick one.
I saw.
Go ahead,
a
man.
headline today that said that the number of known galaxies or the number of visible galaxies in the universe could be roughly multiplied by 3. So if there's hundreds of billions of galaxies that are out there and you multiply that by 3, like already they're just discovering more
That's
and more.
like 300s of billions of galaxies.
Whatever. Fucking lots and lots and lots, man.
I'm gonna start a religion where you get a galaxy named after you.
There you go.
There we are.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I had you can actually get like pictures of the sky from where you are at any point
Oh yeah.
on the internet. Of course you can, it's the internet, but like literally from where you are at that point, what's in the sky at that point, at that latitude and longitude,
Uh-huh.
at that point in time.
Yeah.
You can have pictures of the sky of what's up there at that night. Sorry.
I think
it's
that's
cool
cool.
stuff.
Outside.
I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson on a podcast once, and he was criticizing movies for being either like adhering to science rules in a science fiction movie or just like totally blowing shit out of the water. And
Yeah.
I think he was putting Titanic on blast because the night that ever the ship was sinking, they knew what the sky looked like, but they had a different sky projected behind them in the movie, and he was like, you can figure it out because of this and this and this and blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Like, I think that's cool shit.
It is. It's because of the way that everything has a rhythm to it.
Think about how
Everything's
long
on
we've
a
been
different rhythm, but
how long we've been looking at it.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have been genetically identical to us. At least like 250,000 years. Most of that without iPhones.
can't.
Yeah, that's something that people
without star. What's it? It's a star.
Stargazer app.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you hold your phone up and say, "Whoa, there's Jupiter, bro!
Yeah.
It's way back there."
Without Instagram.
Yeah.
What? No, and no. What's crazy to me is that not only have they been looking up at the sky for that many thousands of years. What's crazy to me that 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, even 10,000 years ago, they were making observations of the universe and being correct to what we know now. Now, what we know now might not be correct, but to the best of our knowledge, we're right. Right? That's just
Yeah.
what we all assume.
That's always been that way, though, right?
It's always been
Yeah.
that way. So we could be wrong, and that's just something that you have to assume. That's something you have to take with you. But the fact that people 5,000 years ago were thinking the same things that we're thinking now about the way the universe works is pretty crazy. That they did that without phones and internet and all the information from all of the scholarly resources they've read before, just on their own.
It's all about the transfer of information.
Oh yeah.
Like nowadays it's kind of insane how quickly we can progress because we can access information from other parts of the planet, and if like through internet and things like that, it's better than stone in terms of like its reliability.
Al Gore pulls the plug.
Just a
Or
series
sharks
of
eat
tubes.
the cables of the internet in the waters by Russia.
So it's like the kind of knowledge that they had, if they were able to record it and have that information last through generations and be taught and all that sort of stuff, like the kind of place that we could be at if our communication was better back then is unthinkable. Like if we didn't lose that kind of knowledge and have to rediscover it, there's still stuff they knew back then that we don't know now that we're learning about. They somehow track all these movements of stars and stuff and say, okay, well, this is what's going on, and we're having to like build cameras and stare at things, and we're looking at things kind of in an indirect sort of way. If we could have just progressed with that knowledge, like where we could be today could be completely different, and it'd be
completely
absolutely insane.
Just think of the engineering marvels of the past that we still don't know how they worked. Right? Like it's it's little things. Like when I was in Spain, I went to a castle in Sevilla, I think, and they had it was really, really old, and they had a clock in there that was literally a 12-hour clock that followed the cycle of the sun that spouted water out of each side of it for an hour at a time. I'm not kidding. And that was built that's not crazy years ago, but 1,000 years ago or so. And then 500 years ago or 700 years ago, or 600 years ago, when the, I can't remember, the Moors or something like that. I could be completely wrong. It doesn't matter. When whoever the conquerors, maybe it was the Catholics, who knows. Whoever the conqueror at the time tried to figure out how to make it work, or how it worked, because they were mesmerized by it, and then they took it apart, and they've never been able to figure it out, and we still don't know how it worked the way they did. They find new ways to make it work using modern technology, but they don't know how they originally had it working. That's one thing, right? And that's something that we have the history of. So like Dan was saying, where if we don't keep the recorded history, it's unfathomable where we could be right now. So imagine we did have that for just everything. We'd be so advanced.
Well,
We'd be living on Mars 50 years ago.
You can look at graphs. I don't know exactly what the axes would be, but one's time, and I can't remember the other ones, like knowledge of some sort. And you see knowledge going up, and all of a sudden, the Dark Ages, book burning and like destroyed, and everything kind of dropped down, and then had to start fresh with another uptick, and it just went way up. So if you could just draw the exponential graph, like we'd be kind of in exponential territory right now if it wasn't for that big loss of information. So, I mean, that's just one recorded chunk. Like, you can go back through history. The conquerors burned, all the old shit. I don't want to read your religious texts or whatever. Or, your scholars are crap because we just, invaded your entire country, right? So it's insane how much information was lost just, because we didn't.
Disagree.
People disagree.
Or they
Yeah.
look different, or they had different culture and customs.
Oh yeah, you pray to a different god, so whatever scientific stuff you guys have figured out, even though it wasn't really science back then, but
So
who cares about that?
Then what's really crazy, like to add on to this amount of craziness we're talking about right here, what's really crazy then is that everything that we have, not everything, but the majority of what we're going off of for any older literature is not much older than the Renaissance. Now, don't get me wrong, we do have texts from a long time ago too, but the majority of it is from, especially in Western civilization. I shouldn't lump Asia in because they were totally different, but the text from the Renaissance age, that's it, 500 years. So everything we have that we're basing everything off of is probably 500 years old, except for a couple key, Romans, Greeks, that kind of thing, a couple key things that we have some texts of. That's it. There's so many failed civilizations or civilizations that were taken over that we lost a ton of stuff.
Yeah, that Library of Alexandria was supposed to be just loaded with
full
crazy, all kinds of who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what?
It's
Why was Egypt as advanced as it was back in the day? What
Exactly.
not there that we see? They're still discovering all that new shit. That's one of the coolest things about like stopping and looking at a rock and being like, huh, that looks fucking weird. I wonder what that was. We're like in Montreal, they found that cavern underneath the city that just goes, and they don't know how far it goes yet. It was just like behind this little rock. They had to move some shit out of the way, and all of a sudden there's this like water-filled cavern through the center of Montreal. And like, you just never fucking know what's around the next corner. Human beings keep getting older and older, like genetically the same to the way that we are now. And when I started to learn about how we may not have even been the most advanced race of human beings who have ever lived on the planet, that fucking blew my mind. Like that temple of Göbekli Tepe that was like filled with sand and all that shit. It's fucking crazy shit.
Very intentionally.
Yeah. You think about all of the stuff that would survive if there was a catastrophe across the earth. And it's like the pyramids, Mount Rushmore, and anything else made of fucking stone. Everything else just gets eaten by the earth within
think about that though.
2,000 years.
Let's think about that just real quick. The pyramids, an engineering marvel. Mount Rushmore, some faces on a rock.
Yeah.
Some guy could cry. They had it a little better back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
America.
What was that thing you were just talking about? Sorry, I want to save it for read about it. The buried in sand or something.
Göbekli Tepe. It's this temple that they found that's like, I think it's like been dated around 11,000 years ago ish. Like that's what they can date the sand inside of it. And so the idea is that there was an asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula and caused a massive global flood and like huge recession of the global ice caps. They figure there's theories that North America was under like 2 miles of ice, and then this asteroid hit and it heated up the earth at a massive rate and caused like huge amounts of unprecedented flooding that moved ocean levels up like 200 feet and did all this crazy shit and caused like wild water erosion. Like there's water erosion on the Sphinx apparently, which is a really crazy thing if you think about it being in the middle of the fucking desert. So
that sounds like what Al Gore was predicting way back when.
Yeah, but it's crazy. So this temple they
It's all
found that just
done.
has these like really advanced carvings in the stone that don't show up anywhere else in the geological timeline, and it was totally like filled in with a uniform material. So it was like intentionally buried, and almost as though they knew something was coming and were able to try to preserve something for the future. So maybe they had the ability to see asteroids coming in from way the fuck out there. All of a sudden, there's a big glowing light in the sky and they're like, oh shit, we better fill this fucking thing in so at least when we all die, there's some record that we were here as an existence.
Well, you know how we
that's
like
from a time frame. Sorry, I looked it up because I'd never heard of it before. But that's from a time frame like that's pre-pottery Neolithic time. That place was
Predates cuneiform writing.
it's
Yeah.
that place was there, and if
It's
they
so
had the
su-
brain power to, like you said, to bury it intentionally because of something.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Over
talking
the
you're talking about noticing changes in the sky. Like, I mean, you walk into a place you walk into every single day, and like if something's changed and you didn't change it, you'll probably notice it, right? Like, let's say, you're always used to seeing the magnets in a certain configuration on the fridge. And let's say one magnet's changed, you walk in and it's if it can stand out to a lot of people, say, oh, that's moved. You pick up, you used to see environment so much that when something changes, you kind of pick up on it if you're always staring at it. Like if you always are looking at your fridge, you'll pick out right away when you notice that something's moved on it. And that's something that you kind of just glance at and you open up to get the stuff in the morning. So if you're back in those days where every single night you're staring into your telescope every single day and you notice something that's changing in the sky, it'd be you're staring at it every single day for multiple, probably for at least an hour, and writing stuff down, you're probably going to notice those little slight changes. We don't have people constantly staring through telescopes in order to get their information. They go, they consult the images in their computer and they file through that sort of stuff. So we might even be missing, a little something that's moving, but the computer's picking it up because it's telling us, this light's changing. So I don't think we have the same attention to detail that they had back then, because they didn't have devices
They didn't
to
have
do it
anything
before
blocking
them.
and a lot of
Light
those,
pollution.
Yeah,
There's-
and,
yeah.
and a lot of
Satellites
those
and stuff.
Exactly, and a lot of those civilizations also worked on a very communal, basic form of community. Right? That everyone had their jobs and they all did that. So the guys who were looking at the stars did that every fucking day.
Yeah.
Right? We're missing shit too.
There's just imagine the kind of shit, like they say that Nikola Tesla's time machine could have worked with modern day technology. They would just have the technology, so they couldn't test their theories and build said time machine. It's just like if we had the kind of knowledge, even from a couple, not even very long ago, it'd be kind of crazy if we had that stuff preserved.
Oh yeah, that would be so crazy.
But
No, seriously,
Well, we
that'd be
would-
so cool if.
we'd be able to say, oh yeah, there was a comet that hit
and
right
that's
here.
the worst part about living, in my opinion, is that, and I guess living, if you understand what we're talking about, if you understand the complexity of humanity, and the complexity of Earth, and the complexity of the universe, the worst part about living is that you're alive for such a short period of time that you don't get to really notice much, and you only get to see what's happening in your lifetime. That's it. And if you die at 2 or 22 or 42, you only have that section of time to look at. That's all you have. Luckily for us, we can look back further, especially with the internet in our hand. But at the same point, we still don't know what the technology of the future is going to be.
I know, it's so fucking crazy.
It's like don't get me wrong, I like living.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
that's what makes it so tough. Is that
I was talking to my grandpa this summer. He grew up horse and buggy.
Yeah.
yeah,
He had a horse and buggy. I'm like, when did you guys first get a vehicle? And he was like, he said he thinks around the time when he was about 20 or so, 19, 20, his dad got his first car.
Car.
Imagine telling him,
And then now my grandpa has an iPhone. So what are we gonna see?
yeah, imagine going back to that time when he was 20 and saying, hey, within your lifetime, you're going to be able to see, naked people have sex on a little square in your pocket.
Yeah.
anytime
It'll sound,
you want.
and it would sound,
and any version of making people having sex.
it would sound
Any version of
absolutely how what
Yeah.
like a little it wouldn't compute at all.
It's going to be a thing that
that's
we
like
remember
anything,
pre-internet.
What?
Oh yeah,
Like,
and that's what annoys me right now is that all these people are doing that. That's the thing on the internet right now is all us older millennials.
Oh,
You
really?
know what I mean? It's like
Bragging about pre-internet
not necessarily
bliss.
bragging about the internet, but just talking about all the nostalgia of the past all the time. Fucking 90s, bro.
Fucking-
90s.
Well, nostalgia, I'm pretty sure, brings up like fires some neurons in your brain that they're very enjoyable.
Oh, for sure. Like when, even when we're at, after our jam sessions or before our jam sessions, we're at Billy's house, so we jammed his bedroom. There's a lot of love in that. It's
Good.
beautiful. But we're in the bedroom and we pull out YouTube, and then me and Billy. I'm not trying to leave Dan out, but me and Billy have known each other since we were kids,
Yeah.
and we grew up listening to the same music and playing in a band in high school, and really our formative years of finding music that we loved we did together. So we'll do that. We'll take trips down nostalgia lane. Try to
It's
stump
Daryl,
each
I have
other.
a song that you haven't heard forever.
Exactly.
Don't look.
Don't look. I'm gonna surprise you. See if you can guess it. It's like I've heard this. I don't know who it is. Or that one song, that first riff comes on, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, that's the one. I remember that.
And it's like people. I think it's rooted in our like the most important thing I think in just humans throughout our short little span of time has been communication. Every advancement we've made in some way, I wouldn't say everything, but the vast majority of it is some way to communicate better. Like the whole point of like having the internet in our pocket is based on communication. Like I can turn this thing on right now. I can go to, Facebook and see who's engaging on my, page, or someone could go on to Facebook and see how many likes they got or how many people viewed their story on Snapchat. And it's like we're so connected to that, ability to communicate. And so back before, you had this sort of I guess the technology doesn't even really matter, but building bonds with people is so important, especially in a community, in a village, that sort of thing, because especially back then and what we've had to deal with for the majority of our existence as humans is have to survive, and you want to go above and beyond for the people you care about, so you create really deep bonds with the people in your tribe and your community or whatever. So when you kind of relive the songs that you love to listen to together, back in the day, I think that
It strengthens the bond.
it strengthens the bond, but it's your brain is specifically firing off dopamine when that's happening, because we've evolved to know that strengthening bonds between each other is part of survival. So I think when you turn on that old song that you listened to way back when or whatever, and you're both like, oh, do you remember this part and all that sort of stuff, you're basically, we've evolved to thrive off that sort of emotion and be like, oh yeah, that reminds me that we've been great friends for a long time, so I know that we've got each other's backs if shit goes down and we have to survive. So that's like we're encouraged to try and keep those bonds with people that we've had for an even short amount of time. Inside jokes, all that sort of stuff is there to try and gauge, okay, I've got a good bond with this person, he remembers this funny moment, sort of thing. This guy I can trust more, and you build that thing up, and your brain the whole time is like has a little needle, and it's like, yeah, I want you to do that, have more dopamine, have more drugs, yeah, bond with that person, sort of thing.
Is that part of the draw of writing, playing, and performing music? Like, do you feel that on any real tangible basis?
Huge.
Like
Like a bond?
the bond.
Yeah.
Being facilitators to bonds, being the the bonder in some
Being
cases.
the
Does that have
bonder, no. I'll say no personally. I don't think so, because I don't think that many people listen to it. We could be the bonder for a handful of people.
yeah.
But for
Well,
us,
for our old band, we definitely. I get people from
That's true.
Yeah, the Dying Effect, so sweet.
I do too.
What was your old band name?
The Dying Effect.
The Dying Effect.
Oh, Dying Effect. Okay,
So
cool.
we played a show here in town, and I've run into one person in my entire time here that thinks they remembered who I was or who my band was. Not for sure,
Yeah.
but just remembered. And yeah, no, I get that. There are people that we've probably touched, but like I said, a handful of people. But for me, it's it's the bond between each other grows over time writing music.
This is my cat Jimmy, by the way.
What up, Jimmy?
He's making himself at home. He's named after Jimi Hendrix.
There you go.
And he's actually like a super badass hunter cat.
You know, that reminds me, because we were talking earlier about emotion and, you know, music and
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. I was going to mention that, like, Jimi Hendrix and Voodoo Child, the opening riff where he's just working the wah pedal and, you know, doing that whole thing. You listen to that, and to me, it sounds like a kid crying. Like that's what I get out of that opening riff. And like the end of it, like is like just when it's kind of freaking out a little bit. It sounds like a kid crying. Voodoo Child, like that's the sort of thing. There's no lyrics, but it paints a really clear picture.
See that to me
Oh, this is.
is live.
Uh-oh. Wrong
But I
one.
mean, I think he's trying to bring that emotion out. Like I can really feel like that's what he's trying to convey. I could be
That's what
wrong, but
good musicians do, right?
yeah.
Oh, that's it.
So incredible.
Do you know what? I'll tell you what this reminds me of right after. That brings me back to like Hollywood Hulk Hogan in the WCW. That was his walk-in music.
I know. I remember Hulk Hogan having that. That's for sure.
That's the first time I heard it was that, and then my brother bought the album, the Jimi Hendrix Experience album.
So let's talk about that. Favorite albums of all time. Like,
Oh,
I love playing the game of like, who's your favorite guitar player? Who's your favorite album?
Can of worms, bro.
I
Your
know.
favorite color?
What's your favorite?
Do you prefer guitars with headstocks or ugly?
Guitarist?
well,
Guitar.
my
Favorite album. Favorite album. All time.
Dan, go first. Favorite album.
Physical Graffiti, Led Zeppelin.
It's so fucking good.
Has my favorite guitar player and my favorite bass player in the band. Maybe drummer too.
John Paul Jones is so incredible.
Oh,
to watch on bass.
it's insane. And I don't know that album. It's technically a double album. Like the B-side stuff is, you know, it's still good, but you can really tell the transition of Led Zeppelin into like their more weird phase there. But the thing about that album is they have some like really, really strong. It's the album where they really put everything together, and they've got some really hard hitting originals on there. Like, you know, a lot. One thing that was really interesting for me was Kashmir, because it has like a 4/4 drum feel with 3/4 on the guitar layered over top of it, and that was the first time that I really realized, I'm like, oh, you can take, you know, one time signature and another time signature and put them together. If you listen, and polyrhythms, yeah, and it kind of was like, whoa. It just encapsulates everything that I love about the band. And I started listening to music. I had the Pokemon the movie soundtrack, and a girl liked in grade 4 liked NSYNC, so I had an NSYNC album, and that's all I listened to. And then I got a Green Day album like a year later, and I was like, okay, music's kind of okay, but I always thought music was like woman in song compilation. That's all my parents ever listened to, so I thought music was nothing.
Oh,
Then my
I remember those.
and then my friend.
Songs for women. Featuring Sarah McLachlan and Katie Lang.
Fucking Dolly Parton, Shania Twain.
Sounds awful.
Sounds like Santa's sleigh. But my friend showed me Led Zeppelin, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Music's good?
Yeah.
And so a lot of that is the nostalgia of discovering that music was really good. Like, I could probably pick a band now that I listen to a lot more,
Yeah.
like Protest a Hero. But that is that band and that album is what basically opened me up, and I was like, wow, music's good. I want to be in this.
I remember my buddy playing me Led Zeppelin as well, Harrison, in his car in Saskatoon, and like Led Zeppelin 1, like the Immigrant Song, on whatever full volume you have when you've just gotten your license, and you're like riding around with your buddy in a car for the first time. Like, holy fuck, that's life changing as a teenager. Oh my god. Wow! Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Or just driving in cars is.
Remember with Carrie and his Colt?
Oh yeah, he
My
had the
friend
best
had
sound
this
system.
rattly old like Colt. What is it? Is it
Volkswagen Colt.
No, it wasn't a Volkswagen.
Chevy Colt.
Chevy Colt or something like that. This
Chevy
little
Colt,
tiny
that's
hatchback. And he had the biggest system in it. The thing was rattling apart because his subwoofers and everything were just blowing this thing apart. And we would just drive around and just listen to just... Yeah.
I don't think he listened to that though.
It was more like Slayer.
Yeah.
That is just such an iconic opening bit for a song.
Oh yeah, the only thing I didn't like about that song is that they used it twice in the new Thor movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
No, anyway.
Did they?
Oh man.
So that was my favorite album.
Yeah.
Was this question is so fucking hard.
I know.
Can I point one song?
Yeah.
In My Time of Dying, I think
Oh,
it'd be
so
cool to
incredible.
name like your favorite song from your favorite album.
That was my first song that I learned how to play slide with. So fucking good.
Good shit.
I never I grew up on the other side of the fence, gentlemen. I grew up with,
VeggieTales.
I was too old for VeggieTales.
I watched me some VeggieTales.
I grew up with Christian music. My dad's a pastor. I listened to nothing but Christian music, and some of it was
POD, bro.
Oh, I like POD.
Yeah.
Of course I did. I actually got into an argument with my friends that I was like, POD's not rap rock, they're reggae. No,
They're not reggae.
They're definitely rap rock.
Yeah.
But Billy was one of those friends. I said
Oh,
while
yeah.
he's gone. But no, my favorite albums, like, it's lucky. I'm lucky. I had a brother who's 4 years older than me, and he was always into finding things out sooner than I was. And he started by, we listened to our church music when we were kids, but he started listening to some heavier church music, right? Because he had friends who were a couple years older than him, and they would go to the Christian bookstore, and they'd buy, an album by MXPX, who everyone's probably heard of nowadays in the punk scene. You guys probably haven't, but
Yeah.
okay, there you go.
I had some friends that were punks.
Yeah, so MXPX was like the beginning for my brother, and then
No
I
Effects and
I
shit,
started to
yeah.
like that too.
No effects is good.
Well, see, but then we didn't listen to NoFX. We listened to the Christian versions of that. So the same thing. There was a record label called Tooth and Nail Records, which is a Christian record label out of Seattle, and they started with punk, and then they started to get a couple heavier bands, and then they went from punk or they kept the punk side, but then they also broadened out into some heavier genres and started a second label called Solid State Records, which was all metal bands. And that changed my world because there was something about it. There was a band called Blindside who was like nowadays you'd call it new metal, but they were from Sweden in 1997, and it's not that way, but they were heavier than punk and still melodic, so I really enjoyed them, and then it just kind of broadened from there, and then all of a sudden I started listening to bands that weren't Christian bands, and I loved punk, I loved all that stuff. So when I was a kid, I'd say probably Blindside was like their first, I think it's just their first album, and then their fourth album, Blood of Burning Fire, came out when we were in high school. That album was wicked.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to later in life, the one album that I listen to all the time, without end, probably once a week, once every couple weeks, is Black Dahlia Murder's Nocturnal.
Interesting.
It's their third album. They're a death metal band. It's their third album. Their first one was just their first album. It was very all over the map. They didn't have the best lineup at that point. They were really good. Great fucking album. Their second one I never really listened to. I've listened to more now. It's pretty good, but it's still a lot more chaotic. And then Nocturnal, they got a new drummer named Shannon Lucas, who's, to me, one of the best. And then the songwriting on that album just flipped a switch. It was, everything went up. The production value of the album went up from their last one. And it was so good. Every song from beginning to end, you could listen to the whole thing over and over. And I still do. And like, I liked it enough that I got one of the song names tattooed on my leg.
That's
I love the song.
badass.
And what's that?
Death Mass Divine.
Is that your favorite song?
Yeah, that song's about literally, by far, my favorite Black Dahlia Murder song. It's literally...
It'd be weird if you didn't tattoo your favorite song, but your second favorite song. If you were going to commit to one, you'd want it to be your favorite.
No, but I did it. That's my second. When I lived in Calgary, I did a acoustic show. Like, we just did one show, and we recorded a couple songs with Billy. But we did that Black Dahlia Murder song as a cover song. So a death metal song as an acoustic song, but I had a girl sing, and it's literally about a guy whose wife or girlfriend or whoever, his lover, dies, and so he stuffs her body so he can continue to be with her.
Oh.
in the afterlife. That's literally what it's about.
Very black metal.
Very black metal, but it's got the coolest double kick chorus. It's just it's their best album. It's my favorite album.
Very cool.
Great song.
What's your favorite album?
You're up, boy.
Really?
The first thing that got me into like heavier music, like music period. I wasn't really ever into music, and then I went to my friend's hockey practice, and one of their warm-up songs was "Seek and Destroy" by Metallica. It's the first time I ever heard that and that riff, and it comes on and they blared it through like the big speakers throughout the arena, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? And just like it hit me so hard. I was like, holy shit, like this is so good. And I never knew what that song was, and then like I don't know if it was a year later or whatever, then I really liked Enter Sandman. I heard that on the radio or whatever, and then I remember singing that in the shower and stuff, and like I never really cared about music much, and then I started listening to Metallica stuff, and then I figured out that, then I finally found the Seek and Destroy song, and then I heard that riff again, and I was like, holy shit, like this is that one riff I heard like years ago. So I was like, Metallica was the band that really got me into music and guitar playing and stuff. It's hard to pick an album.
Super hard.
I'd have to say Justice for All. Metallica. I listened to that a lot and learned pretty much every song on that album.
And you'll still listen to that.
I still listen to that. Yeah. I still go back and listen to that stuff all the time.
It's fun when you can revisit an album after like years and years and years of listening and still appreciate the nuance to the details that are inside of it.
What's crazy too, at least for me, is that I go back and this has just been happening the last couple of years because I have a minivan that's an older one and there's no aux cord, so I just have a CD player. So I have my old CD book, and I haven't bought CDs for
The 4x4
how many
flip
years?
over.
It is. It's the full big case Logic. Yeah. So it's one of those, and I pull CDs out of there every time I'm in the van, and I pop something new in all the time, and it's a random mishmash of shit I listened to from when I was 12 to 25, and again I haven't bought a CD in 5-6 years. But
Yeah.
I bought a couple. I got the new Black Dahlia because I had to. But you put them in, and not only do you remember the songs and do you remember the feeling, and you can hear the nuances in the music, but you remember the parts in the music. Especially maybe it's just me as a drummer or a musician.
Drum parts and like,
The drum parts, like I can sit there immediately, song I haven't heard in 5 years, and be drumming on my steering wheel along, or listening to things that I haven't listened to since I was a kid, and knowing all the words, and knowing where the next part comes in, or knowing
like
how
Six
things
of
change.
VeggieTales.
like VeggieTales.
What was your favorite song off that album?
Justice.
Yeah, Justice.
This is such a fun game to play because
I'd
it's
say-
so hard.
Probably Blackened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like the really fast stuff. So
Oh,
like,
that one's sick.
like the really fast music was always like it hit hard with me. Like always the upbeat stuff. That's why a lot of our songs, like even still we're kind of folk music, a lot of our songs are pretty fast.
Yeah, so, okay, you guys all have, like, metal and heavy rock influences, and you've all named me, like, metal instrumentalists and, like, all this other kind of shit.
Where
does folk come from?
No one said, that was the first time anyone said the word folk in this whole thing so far.
So where I guess where that comes from is like me and Daryl have always liked writing music together, and then when I moved to the Okanagan, for the first couple months I lived in my parents' house, and Daryl was living in my parents' basement suite, so we essentially lived in the same house.
Which
We
was
wanted to
fucking
write,
awesome.
yeah, we
was
wanted
great
to write
times.
music together, but it's like it's just two of us. So it just started with me and Daryl on acoustics. So like, that's
two
where
of us playing guitar.
yeah.
That's
And then we
kinda how we did.
recorded stuff. Recorded a couple of stuff. It's like, well, let's just throw some drums in there and like just make a little thing. And then we recorded a couple songs before we were even a band. And then Daryl says, like, I know a bass player. Do you want to like see if like he'd fit? And I'm like, sure. So we jammed with Dan a couple of times, and then we weren't even thinking about having shows or anything. It was just kind of like a, let's just like, I don't know, jam and play some music.
Yeah.
And then a guy that we knew from way back in the day
In Red Deer.
In Red Deer. He was having a show, and Jeff Wimborne,
Yeah.
and he
Shout
was
out.
having a show. in-
Jeff Pike, Winborn.
Yeah, I always call him Jeff Wimborne.
The windy streets of Red.
He was having a show in Kamloops, and he asked us if we wanted to open. And we're like, oh shit! Like I think we had maybe 3 songs at the time, so we rushed and like wrote a couple.
No,
of
we
songs
had
really
we had
fast.
5 because we had 5 songs before Dan came.
I remember rushing to
4?
write a song
We had 4
at
songs.
least because we didn't have enough songs for even like an opening set. I think we rushed at least a song or 2.
Oh, for sure we did.
Yeah.
In fact, to be honest with you, Eric, every single song we wrote since then was rushed before we needed to play another show.
Yeah, and we're like,
Literally,
let's get
every
this thing done so we can play it.
So every other song since then, except for the last 2, but it was
Producers.
yeah the ones that were gonna drop our new deuce.
Yeah. There might be a 3rd one on there, so now the album name has to change. So.
Trace.
Did you listen to much folk before Billy was like, hey, let's...
Yeah.
Ding-a-ling?
I am the most eclectic music taste. Not the most. I'm not like in the world.
Besides me.
Besides Billy and Don, I'm the most. So besides these 2, no, but I have the most eclectic version. I still will go back to my early '90s music that my dad listened to. That was like power ballads, but it was Christian, so it was like wicked.
Christian power ballad.
Christian power ballads.
There's Christian everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird.
Of course, they have
It's
to have
like
their
just
own
makes you
version of
feel uncomfortable. For me, it did anyway. You get halfway through the song and it's all just like you recognize the symbolism in the lyrics, and I don't know, it just gave me the
But,
heebie.
and my point of view on that, especially having been raised in that and not necessarily believing that anymore, is that it sometimes it drives me nuts because it can seem a little preachy. But on the other side of it, they're still doing some. Don't get me wrong, there are some bands that do it specifically because they sound like someone else.
Mhm.
They find a market for that. But it's just other musicians who happen to believe something who write about what they feel strongest about. Right?
For sure. I get it. It's just not for me.
But no, yes. In answer to the question, I did listen to a lot of folk stuff, just because I always enjoyed, like Glenn Hansard. Once I saw the movie once, instantly hooked to the stuff he did. It was a great album, but he's done a bunch of albums since and before that in his bands and whatnot. And he was really good. And I always liked, I don't know if it's folk, but I loved Elliott Smith in the 90s, or in the early 90s, whatever you call him. Elliott Smith was wicked. I really enjoyed all his stuff. And just singer-songwriter and a guitar. And that stuff was really good. And then Billy showed me, when I really got into the actual folk, Billy showed me the Milk Carton Kids, and that blew my mind for what 2 people, 2 guitars, and 2 voices can do
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
They can do it live.
Yeah, that's kind of our goal, to see like as much as we can do, which is 3 people.
Yeah. I think we succeeded in some parts.
More than some parts. I would say some of your vocals are like quite impressive on the album. I was blown away. Getting to hear you guys also. They played at my birthday. It was fucking sweet.
Yeah, in your yard.
Yeah.
That was
On a
awesome.
flat deck.
On a truck.
Flat deck truck. That was
Oh,
so much
dude.
fun.
Best gig?
It sounded great. Were the vocals more challenging than you like? Had you guys done vocals like that before? Was there like a steep learning curve for it? Like,
No, more so me. Daryl's always been the stronger singer than me, for sure. Me and Daryl, like back in the metal band, we did vocals, but I did like the more dirty vocals, and you did the clean. Like,
You screamed.
yeah, I screamed.
You screamed.
And Daryl always did the melodic vocals, so it worked out better for him being on harmony, because I can't sing harmony very well. So when I'd write the songs, I'd just write the song and sing it and sing the melody, and then Daryl would just come in and he could write a harmony to it, no problem.
But yeah, no, we that's something that we've never, besides 1 or 2 songs here or there, even back in the day, it's never been something that's, I don't know, maybe it's a gift, I guess, I got from my mom, that I can just hear it. I can hear the harmony, so it's not ever a problem to come up with a harmony,
mm-hmm.
for the most part. sometimes it's fun to come up with 4 harmonies or 5 harmonies at once.
We're recording.
When we were recording, like so in between the years when we were in the metal band in high school and just after high school to now, we recorded like, I don't know, 7 or 8 songs just literally over years. And it was just Billy in with MIDI keyboard, drums, and him playing 3 or 4 guitars over it and doing guitar and doing bass and whatever, and keyboards, but doing like guitar battles with himself, like solo battles and just doing whatever you possibly could to make some fun. And so I got to do that with vocals because he'd send me the tracks. I'd write lyrics to them. I'd go up to Edmonton or Red Deer, wherever Billy was, we'd record them. But I got to do 5-6 part harmonies. So we just brought that forward into this, and sometimes, we try to keep it a little more mellow by just keeping it the 2 of us. But there are a couple choruses, and in the album that there's 3 harmonies. There's one part where there's 6 vocal tracks at once, just me doing 6 vocal tracks. The very intro to Alexandra is me doing 4-part harmony ooze while Billy sings the melody over top.
Those ooze might be my favorite backing melody on the whole album. It's fucking rad. Like, it sets the whole tone for the beginning of the song and the album. I think it's really cool. I'm such a huge fan of well manufactured intros to albums because it just like it's like
it sets the tone.
It's your first impression, right? Yeah. You don't get another one, and it 100% sets the tone. And I thought you guys knocked it out of the park.
I'm pretty lucky to have been like, hey, come try play bass with this stuff, because I mean, I don't know, before actually going in, sitting down and playing with these guys, Daryl showed me a couple of songs that they did together on their phone. Some of it was actually the Dying Effect, some stuff was afterwards, right? So I kind of knew Daryl had a voice, and I knew Billy had some guitar chops, but I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't understand kind of the, not just the level of, talent they have, but the ability they have to work together and just, it's like, hey, here's this, and it's like, oh, here's that, and all of a sudden it's like, here's some lyrics, and oh, I've got this melody, and all this, the song's just building right in front of me, and it's, I was pretty stoked as I started to see the process as we, wrote a song or two, how easily they work together, and you could tell that, they've spent a lot of time together, especially with music, kind of sharing things and, really building off each other, so they know kind of what they like, and that dynamic was very, very interesting to watch and try and, luckily for the bass parts are very on the surface very skeletal, so I mean you could pull in a lot of people, and
such a good ghost hunt.
you can plug in. I'm not saying like there's a uniqueness to it all, but like you can plug in a lot of like very like generic little bits to the bass, and you'd still have really really solid song, because just their songwriting ability makes it easy to kind of look at what there is left and like, oh, there's not much to put in here on top, so you're kind of just sprinkling.
I do have to say, Dan,
you're just kind of sprinkling on top of the bass. You're not really.
Dan adds so much character to the songs.
Yeah,
like if you listen to the old songs where I played bass on it and I was just doing like a root fifth, like beat boots or whatever. We call them beat boots in our band.
Yeah,
beat
boots. They said.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, he was like, what do you want? I was like, what do you want? Do you want me to just do the beat boops from like the recordings? And that's where it came from.
Yeah.
And Dan being the guy he is, he just couldn't and needed to jam.
Well, and Dan's like,
which is great.
Hold back, or do you want me to just like
give her?
We just said go crazy. Like once Dan started jamming with us, I saw like he was a very like really good bass player, best bass player I've ever like jammed with.
Mm-hmm.
So
no offense, Bryce.
So I was like, just give her. Like I don't care. Like that's part of like what kind of our thing is just. At any corner we can, we try to showboat like our.
Except for the drums. There's times every time I wanted to do anything, Billy's like, no. let's just.
Well, after your little drum solo at Serenity there, we had to dial you back.
No, that was
Drum
was literally
solo.
supposed to be a joke. It's a drum solo. So we were playing a show at Serenity Music Festival, like up in Clearwater, BC, and we were just kind of invited as their quote unquote. I don't know if it was honored guest or whatever.
No, it was like
special Sunday.
It was like
treat.
spotlight new artist or
That's
something
it.
like
Yeah.
that.
So we went up there and played, and then in Ripple in the Stream, which you know, it's just kick and tambourine. That's it. So I'm standing there, and then Dan does a bass solo, Billy does a guitar solo, so then I just went drum solo.
He does drum solo in the mic and just goes off on a kick and tambourine. And me and Dan are like, what the fuck?
It was like it was some
And
like
the crowd is just laughing.
it was some deep progressive jazz off the fucking
But
charts.
here's the fun part about it is that, yeah, it was fucking dumb, but it didn't take away from us being there, because
Yeah.
that's kind of we just have fun on
That's a
stage.
fucking live show too, man. Like,
Oh yeah,
if an artist never
No,
took a chance on stage, then nothing would have ever happened.
no, and that's what I mean on the recordings. Like, and in this music, it's honestly better that the drums are fairly simple. Now, don't get me wrong, going like this, which I'm moving my hands back and forth really fast all the time.
Duck, digga, duck, digga, duck, digga, duck, digga, duck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's if you listen to the album, there's quite a few little intricate, not fills, because I only have one drum, but I'm doing different rhythms with my hands. It's subtle rhythms mostly, so I get to do that a bit. But in general, we kind of kept the drums dialed back because it's not really drum led music. The drum's just there to give the beat.
The cool thing that after recording our music is what I realized is like your snare typically follows the rhythm of the guitar, like the strumming pattern of the guitar, and your kick hits when Dan changes notes on the bass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
that's literally
So
the
like
style
it's
of
just it
The
just
pieces-
accentuates both of them.
yeah, it fits with the style that we've made.
They're easy puzzle pieces to put together because because there's such a I wouldn't say in a way there's a simplicity to kind of how the basic structure of each song is, you know, similar in how you can just, you know, like there's a fail safe when every time there was like, okay, let's try and add bass into this, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do root and fifth, the beat boop. And I'd always start off of the beat boop and have it morph from there, but it was like, we know that this puzzle piece is gonna fit together most of the time. Sometimes it was like, okay, let's not beat boop here, but that's
Just rude.
but it'd be like, here's a new song, I'm gonna try the same thing again. And I think that brings up what, you know, you mentioned earlier, liking the verse chorus sort of thing. It's like every song we approached kind of had a similar feel to it, that it kind of seemed like it was easy to, you know, put those pieces together because they were all sort of similar.
You guys don't step on each other a lot, I notice, which is like a thing where if you have the opportunity now to add as many tracks as you want to whatever album, it's really easy to make something really cloudy and really like busy, you know. And I'm a fan of being able to hear each individual piece on their own, contributing to the whole, but nobody trying to take over at one point or another.
Important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think we all kind of feel that way, except for Dan when he's just jamming. Subtlety's not important at that point. He's fucking going. But no, when we're recording and when we're writing, subtlety is very important. So there's a lot of little intricacies on the record that you'd have no clue are there, that only we do. And whether it actually changed the song or not, who knows? Like there's no telling now. But just little things like little sound effects, little things that Billy did on the keyboard that just kind of add something.
Or like we decided to just, you know, very subtly pull back a track a little bit. Like maybe we need a little bit less of this in this section, where, you know, if you listen through it like at a pass or two, it wouldn't really stand out. But to us, it felt like, you know, even that subtle difference, you know, really kind of put the contrast right where we wanted it.
Yeah, it's and that's what's, like you said, we're not really super overproduced, but we did add a lot of those little things that you never would notice when we did the recording.
Yeah, minor tweaks that kind of made things.
I mean, I think you're
Feel
allowed to
better.
be polished and still raw and original. Like, there's something about just respecting the listener at some certain point, and trying to rough out or smooth out any of the overly rough edges that might
Yeah,
be
of
there
course.
otherwise. And at a certain point, those rough parts are taking away from your performance on the album, and you want to sound polished and complete. So that totally makes sense.
Sometimes those imperfections kind of make a song.
That's
There's
true.
a song by
I love hearing a guitarist fuck up.
Well, there's a song by Beck. It's on the album Odelay, I think, and
Where it's at? Love that song.
oh, this is a great song. It's not called Black Hole because that one's just like white noise. It's a really weird one, but Lord Only Knows is the song, and it's a regular Beck song, so it's kind of weird, alternative lyrics, and he's got extra musical effects in there and everything. But then he tries to do this tapping solo. And it's like, he's going for it. And then the last little phrase of the solo, he kind of screws up. He's like, doodle 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 now. And then he goes right back into, I think a bridge or something. But it was like, it's like he made that mistake and he was like, I like that mistake so much that I'm just going to keep it instead of trying to actually do this tapping solo sort of thing. And he's just like, let's just leave it there. And there's like little bits that aren't perfect in our when we were recording and stuff like that. I was like, nah, that's good. It wasn't just like, okay, that's good enough, let's move on. But it was like, if you kept recording over and over, try to get that perfect little sound, then it took away a little bit of the flavor.
But it was like, it's good
And the
enough,
character.
let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the end. Like,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It
Right?
wasn't like, yeah, fuck.
At a certain point, you have to be satisfied and be like, I'm going to put this out and we'll see what happens. And if
Yeah.
I want to
Exactly.
change something for next time, then I can, and whatever. That's one of the cool things that
Or we'll fucking we'll tweak it in post.
yeah.
Just leave it
Fair.
with me. Yeah, don't worry. I'll spend an hour fixing that.
But like you all know, there's those songs that you've been playing since you started playing, and you play them differently now than you did a year after you learned them versus 3 years after you learned them versus 5 years after you learned them. You know what I mean? Like they just evolve. You get better at playing them. You start playing them in a different way. You pick up on different low and high notes within the song, particularly if guitar playing, different strumming progressions or like picking patterns or different shit. So it's for me, that's one of the like most alive parts about music is like letting songs and things that you play and things that you know evolve over time, and you just like not maybe noticing the differences day to day, but then you listen to something that you played 5 years ago and you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I was okay with that at that time.
I'm pretty sure, like, a month ago, we jammed, and Dan actually said the words, I'm pretty sure I don't play any bass lines the same now that I did on the record when we recorded it. Yeah, so
They evolve.
Yeah, they've all evolved. Well, and you
Then-
just fucking...
Well, it's
Even
because-
stuff that's like really old. You listen back and it's like, because like I was cleaning out my truck today and I was driving around in it, and the CD that was in there was our Dying Effects CD.
Oh, good choice.
So it's been so long since I've listened to that. So I was like, fuck. I was like, well, let's just listen to this and turn it up. And I went to the song Enchanting Shadows.
Oh, it's such a good song.
Yeah, and I was
I
like,
love that
fuck,
song.
like, I'm like, I was 18 when I wrote this. I'm like, that's pretty fucking good. Like, not, like, looking back, it's like, I would think, okay, when I was 18, I knew shit about guitar. But like, and then I listened to the shit I was writing, I was like, it's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. And talking about lyrical imagery and stuff that we have now, our stuff was always like that. Enchanting Shadows is about two ghosts sword fighting on a bridge.
No, it's a guy sword fighting with a ghost.
Oh, sorry. It's a guy sword fighting with the ghost. on the
Know your
bridge.
music, dude. Come on, man.
We had a song about coming back and fighting zombies. We had songs about, just dumb shit. But we always kind of
It was
had...
always kind of a joke.
It's
It was like, let's
everything.
like write something that's kind of jokingly metal. While having a sword fight with a ghost is definitely fucking metal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty badass.
We named our album The Night, or
Bleed the Night.
Bleed the Night, yeah.
Did you just forget your own album name?
Well, it says Step into the Night right there, and our new album's called The Night the Mountain Fell. So
Bleed the Night and the Night. Yeah, we have lots of songs on that.
Well, that's cool. They go way back with actually writing music together, right?
Was that hard to step into? Like, did you feel
So-
pressure?
So like I started playing music.
We had to learn how to give a good hand job.
Yeah.
Do you ski, sir?
Yeah.
Double.
I played like music. Like I learned tracks at home, like everybody does on guitar. I played guitar in jazz band, and then I decided I wanted to join the regular band in high school. It's because they're going on a trip to Anaheim, and so I was like, okay, I'll learn how to read, bass clef and stuff, and learn how to play bass because I can play guitar, and then I can fake my way into band. Most of my playing career, I've always been playing other people's music, and like whatever I've kind of created has been my own at home. Like my band in high school, my buddy, he wrote pretty much everything, and whenever I wanted to kind of flare up the bass, like sometimes it's like, okay, you can do a little bit there, but there was a lot of restriction, just kind of like, no, this is what I want here, which is fine. Don't get me wrong, but almost all the creative stuff I've done has been on my own. Kind of writing my own bass lines. I listen to a very diverse number of bass players and things like that. So I have a lot of different genres that I kind of can pick from if I want to put stuff together and play it. So when like not only seeing how easy it was for them to work together, but like for them to just be like, is it okay if I just do my thing? And they're like, yeah. And after a while, like, okay, am I too busy here? I'm not too, what am I doing there? Like, no, just keep doing what you're doing. That was huge because I could finally take all the stuff that I was kind of experimenting at home with and just actually apply it. Whereas learning other people's music, I wasn't applying it near in the same sort of way, and so it was just absolutely, it was a huge change for me and absolutely kind of blew things up because I think I had hit a plateau in my learning, and it just kind of started going right back up again once I was given the opportunity to be creative. And that's a huge thing, is just in general, like you don't necessarily know what somebody can bring to the table unless you kind of unleash them a little bit and say go. And sometimes people don't even know what they have, right? So not even just in music, but there could be somebody at work or whatever who could be a lot better than what they are. It's just they don't have that opportunity to kind of like go for it, sort of thing, And, so I was very lucky to have the opportunity not only to be with two people who are really good at songwriting, but also to kind of be given sort of that trust to, hey, you just do what you want to do and we'll see if it works, and like we'll just let it stick if it does, sort of thing. And that just opened up a whole nother level of learning for me with that instrument. So whenever you're not sure what you got in something, you try and give it a go, because you never know what you might stumble upon. I didn't realize I could write bass lines and stuff like that.
And not just that, but you
Gnarly bass solos.
the good bass solos. But you always had you had your 4-string and you had your 5-string bass, but you didn't have a 5-string fretless, and you're like, fuck, this will work with this music, so I'm gonna get that.
Oh yeah,
now you have that, and then you have a 4-string hollow body fretless.
I never played fretless before the band, and I kind of just got one and practiced really hard at home to make sure that I could get all the spacing and stuff so it would sound good, because I wanted it to sound good for the band, because I thought this is the sound I want for this sort of thing. And I didn't know I'd even be able to tackle a fretless instrument, let alone be able to write songs with it and everything. So that was huge. Got right out of my comfort zone and learned something completely new.
And it's surprising that
I had no idea that I could go further with. I thought I plateaued forever with my bass playing. I'm like, hey, this is who I am as a bass player. So
and now it's not. But what's surprising to me and Billy, and this isn't to anything we played before, but metal is the bass lines in metal in general aren't that complicated.
Just smash the root.
You have to give room to the guitar player and to a lesser extent the drummer.
We never really, at least me, I shouldn't speak for you, but I think you've said this before, that we never really understood that bass could be so much more. It could be an actual instrument. We always thought, bass players fucking.
I know, right?
That
Nobody
joke,
wants
that
to
joke
play bass.
exists, right?
It exists.
It's just he's the last guy that came to the band and he used to
But
play
it's-
guitar, but
Yeah.
he couldn't play guitar anymore, so he gets to play bass.
Exactly.
He's the worst guitar player, so he's the bass player of the band.
Yeah.
No, but
Fucking
Dan
bass
brought up
players.
something totally different, because he brought something creativity in bass playing,
Yeah.
which is something that I never thought of. He brought being a fan of the bass. Like, the first time I met Dan, he's like, "Oh, I play bass in a band." I'm like, "Oh, you play bass?" As a joke, because that's just what everyone does. Bass players.
Oh yeah, bass players are like an afterthought.
Everyone makes that joke, but he's like, "No, I love playing bass." I'm like, "Okay,
You can tell.
that is a first."
Yeah.
And yeah, you can tell when he's on stage. His old band that he was in a cover band in town. Like they weren't the greatest. They were good enough, right? They played at
Oh, yeah.
every month.
Yeah, we kept getting gigs, so you know,
So they're-
I
wasn't
mean, stage time is stage time, right?
Exactly, and so I went to watch him play a couple times, and just by far went, "Oh yeah, he's the best musician."
It's
in that
fucking so cool because
And
the
because he
Beatles
was-
and Led Zeppelin did the same fucking thing. They're like, "Oh, that Robert Plant guy, he can sing. Like, he should come in our band."
Yeah,
It's just badass. It's the same, you know.
yeah,
kind
right.
of.
And if we were to be a metal band right now, we'd find someone else who's a way better drummer. Like, I mean that, like,
They would just have a
Or-
bigger kit. That's all.
no, like, if I played on the big kit, it's not the same, right? I have some chops, but not like that.
No, I like the small. I was saying before, like, there's a reason why I like simpler bands. The Black Keys, you know, the White Stripes, that kind of shit. Lightning Hopkins, even Robert Johnson shit, like old blues stuff. You got to make it sound good on your own, because at the end of the day, like, the less you have, the more full you have to sound as like your own individual musician. So I think you're allowed to bring more to the table individually and like try to contribute to make the group sound as big as you can.
Yeah, there is something to be said for bands that, bands that have bigger, 6, 7 people in them, when everyone is doing their part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've been a big fan of some of these instrumental guys. Are just a guy, some of them are groups, and that's what's so cool about listening to some of them when the guitar players, if there's 2 or 3 guitar players in the band, how they work together to A, write the songs in the first place, but B, compose everything and put it all together in one. And I think there's something about that that's also cool. That's just my personal opinion, but that's why I like a lot of the guitar harmonies. Guitar harmonies are incredible.
Yeah.
I find them just guitar and keyboard together. A band that we used to listen to when we were younger, Children of Bodom. We still listen to them now, but the singer and lead guitar player Alexi and I don't know the keyboard player's names, but they worked so well together. And Billy used to show me these videos on YouTube like 10 years ago.
Before YouTube had ads.
Yeah, because these guys had videos. Well, or it might not have even been YouTube. It might have been like, I remember before YouTube, we'd just search wherever we could find music videos of bands. They always had them, but there was a live video. I think it might have been the song "Massive Sanity," maybe not, but a live video of the keyboard player and the guitar player, and they're going back and forth, and it's just, and they're a 5-piece or 6-piece band, and it's just every part has its role, and that's what makes it so cool. So I get it with 2 or 3 guys and how that can be a cool thing, but I really like all versions of what can happen. Iron Maiden adding through a 3rd guitar player.
Yeah, that added a whole ton.
It did, because it let the gallop happen while the leads were happening, while the harmonies were happening.
Something amazing about larger groups, because I played in like concert band, things like that, so I'm used to, a lot of instruments. I mean, there's something to be said about just a little bit of a side tangent. I'll bring it right back, but you're watching, let's say, figure skating, and
That's a side tangent?
Something so many
No.
music and metal fans can relate to.
No,
Oh, here you go.
we can think about this very visually. She goes up there, performance Olympics, and does this, triple spin, and does this other these combinations of things, pushes it to the limit. It's one of the best figure skating routines that have ever happened. Everybody's scoring 9s and things like that out of 10 or however they do it in the Olympics. They put up the big card or whatever, and everybody's clapping, and they're like, wow, we knew that this person was going to come here and push it to limits, and people enjoyed it. Then the next person is like, okay, I got to do something. Goes out there and does, instead of 3 spins, 4. It just pushes it to a limit that you've never seen before. They break a Olympic record, and you see this person pull off what seems to be impossible. And everybody just jumps to their feet, they're clapping, they're cheering. You're compelled to celebrate a human, pushing themselves to a limit and finding something new, and being able to do something that hasn't been done before. And so there's that feeling, right? And there's that feeling I talked about earlier about communication, and communicating with people, and how your brain loves to promote that sort of stuff. So you have that feeling of awe when humans push themselves to a limit and do something that you couldn't think possible. Seeing people in BMX tracks now doing flips and stuff, going back in the day and seeing that, that'd be like, there's wires attached, nobody can do that. So watching people push themselves to the limit and doing new things is very awe-inspiring. So you think at the end of like a symphony and everybody stands up, they're applauding, they're roaring, they're clapping. It's because the musicians have figured out such an advanced, such a nuanced, detailed way of communicating with each other through their music, and they are creating this conversation, I guess, in a sound space that's very like, let's say we take like a composer back when they were, like let's take a Mozart or something, and like when he was cranking out new tunes and people were hearing this stuff for the first time, it was absolutely, mind-blowing, because not only do you have this level of communication that's, top-notch for humans, and we love to see communication happening, it's also they're pushing themselves to their limits to create something new and unheard of and different, and it's, a combination of those two really huge kind of drivers in our psychology that make it so exciting to hear a band, maybe 3, 5, a whole concert or whatever, come together and display not only their high level of communication, but just look what we've produced sort of thing. And that's why you see people standing up at the end of concerts and stuff and clapping and cheering, because it's just, wow, those people really communicated at a high level and pushed themselves to a level that humans can't just generally get to.
So, what I thought you were going to say with the whole figure skating thing was, the one figure skater does out and does good, so the other figure skater does better. And I thought you were going to talk about guitar solos. I thought that's exactly where you were going.
That's the evolution of music, though. Yeah. Like, Eddie Van Halen comes out and he's like, and everyone's like, whoa, what the fuck? And then, people are, trying to figure it out. Like, how do you move your pick that fast? How do you do that sort of stuff? And then some of those guys started teaching a little bit, and it was just, a one-up sort of thing. And when people heard Eddie Van Halen going, and everybody cheers at the end, because it's like,
I know.
That's just the tapping, right? But everyone stands up, they cheer, they're like, holy shit, he just played Eruption live.
And there was some kid going, I want to fucking do that. And then they figured it out.
And they just sat there for hours.
What's so cool about
Guns N' Roses is just Aerosmith on steroids.
Yeah.
Sure.
I can see that.
I get that.
Right?
I can see that for sure.
But what I was going to say is that's what's so cool about right now.
Slash's hat is on steroids.
Yeah.
The one coolest part about technology is about, especially YouTube in particular, is kids learning music. Tutorials.
Yeah.
Stuff that you were just saying that I thought was never possible.
Mm-hmm.
People are doing now. And
Seemed
not just one person,
yeah.
but a lot of people. And it's because the communication nowadays is so everyone can just find whatever they want. They can challenge themselves to the hardest part. There's tutorials on how to do the solos. Artists nowadays are putting out like sheet music and tabs and everything for their music, so people can follow along and get better. And everyone is just getting better and better.
There's Tinder for bands.
Really?
Yeah. It's not so bands can hook up and like bang and stuff, but they can like musically bang each other, sort of thing, right? Like guitar, like a bass player and a drummer can meet up on this application and start maybe share some tracks or share some little things. Like, I like listening to this, I like listening to that. Let's get together sometime and do a little jam session. All of a sudden, you found a person in a way you've never been able to. Might be.
Conbini is like Tinder for musicians looking for bands.
Pull that shit up, Jamie.
that looks kind of familiar. But yeah, there's like stuff you never thought possible. Now, imagine...
Maybe we can Jokes.
Like I heard when I first heard Polini bring it back to him, I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's awesome. And then I started noticing like on some of his tracks on the EPs, there's like featuring this guitar. So I'm like, who's that? Oh, that's a guy from Tesseract. You know, they're up in England, right? And there's, you know, they're talking with another, you know, Swedish guitar player and things like, or he is, and it's all of a sudden like, you never before could have like a Jimi Hendrix who all of a sudden could just, I mean, still the technology was sort of there, but couldn't just be like, you know, just send a track off to, you know, somebody in England, whoever it be, and just be like, hey, you know, bang out a guitar solo for this, send it back, and we're going to produce it. You know, had to go to studios. You still had, there was like a big communication barrier. Now it's like Polini, who's in Australia, who's, you know, a starting out artist, doesn't have a whole ton of money. He doesn't have to fly out to do the recording, or this guy doesn't have to fly to him to do the recording. He can lay down the track, send it off to him. He can lay out his thing and send it right back, and all of a sudden,
home studios.
yeah, and it's just
everyone has a home studio.
Yeah, that's so
boom, boom,
crazy.
boom.
The availability of that. The amount of quality you can record just off your phone now is
Well,
fucking crazy.
Even
Yeah.
10 years ago when we were, or 15 years ago when we were recording our first recordings, like not our first record, but like when we were a pop punk band in high school, we had to get a studio. Where do you go to a studio? We were lucky that Billy's dad's buddy had a little studio in his basement. And he fucking,
It was the coolest thing.
it was the coolest
And
thing
he
ever
had,
because it was a
like,
real
an
studio.
80-piece drum kit.
Yeah, he did. But it was the coolest thing because it was like a real studio. Like he had the glass window, and that's what you saw. And it kind of at some parts of me go, "Fuck, that'd be cool," because we haven't really done that ever.
Yeah.
Like a real professional
No.
studio with a real professional engineer.
Well, we did it at the school.
I know,
I
but
guess those
they
were
were
professionals,
students,
yeah.
Sorta,
right? And
yeah.
I mean,
You guys, we're going to do this is a free plug for a winery in town, but have you heard of Frequency Winery?
yeah, they're right beside it.
Yeah. So you can go and record a song in their recording studio for free, where it's like surrounded by wine bottles and shit like that.
Yeah.
And there's a drum kit and a guitar amp and a bunch of mics, but you should have to check that out if you can. That'd be fucking cool. There's a band, like, remember the Orchard? They opened for you guys at that show.
They went and did that.
yeah.
Yeah. And anybody can go in there and record a song for free if you just like book
Yeah,
it.
you just have to book it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whoa.
Cool.
I just
We should do that. We should do that with Winding Trails. If we have.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We've been going for a while. Do you guys want to wrap this?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
2 hours.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. The album is called The Night the Mountain Fell. The band is This Old Ghost Town. It's now available on iTunes and Spotify.
Amazon.
Amazon.
Streaming on YouTube.
Yeah.
Buy it in stores. No, I'm kidding.
Follow us on Instagram
Follow them on Instagram.
at This Old Ghost Town.
Yeah, don't follow our Twitter. It
have
hasn't
a
been
Twitter?
used.
Our Twitter's a ghost town.
It is a ghost town. It hasn't been used in 4 years, 3 years.
What do you want to go out with a song? Let's pick a song from the album. What do you want to go out with?
We mentioned the past so much.
That's true.
All right,
Do the
good
pass.
pass.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Thanks, This Old Ghost Town.
Well, it's an ordinary night. The lantern's dim, but still inside. My pen is making patterns on parchment about my life, so innocent. But all is quiet in my home. The night is clear, the stars they roam. But there's a growling deep under. It shakes the earth, but oh, the sound. It was the night the mountain fell. With the crack heard far and wide, a thunderous sound that starts to slide. It shakes the earth and shakes my bones. I start to pray to save my soul. A mount is falling to the ground, where tons of rock bury the town. The waves of stone on the attack. In that moment they all turned black. This was the night the mountain fell. Everything we knew was gone so fast. Distant echoes in the past. Many lives are buried deep below. I so fast. Distant echoes in the past. Many nights are buried deep in